There is something underneath the world you see, not beneath it in the way a basement sits beneath a house, beneath it in the way that quantum mechanics sits beneath matter itself, in the way that the ocean floor sits beneath the surface that catches the light, in the way that the oldest roots of the oldest tree sit beneath the soil that everyone walks across, without ever wondering what holds everything up. Most people will live their entire lives on that surface. They will wake up in the same world they fell asleep in, accept the same invisible agreements about what is real, what is possible, what they are, and what the universe is willing to give them. They will call this life. They will call it reality. They will defend it when someone suggests there might be more beneath it. And then there is you. You are not here by accident. You are not watching this because the algorithm happened to place it in front of you at a random moment in a random day. You are here because something in you has been pulling at the surface of your reality for a long time now. Something that knows, without being able to prove it yet, that what you see is not all there is. That the world everyone around you accepts as fixed and final is actually the thinnest possible layer of something with infinite depth. That pull you feel, that persistent, quiet, sometimes aching sense that there is more beneath everything you have been shown. That is not imagination. That is not wishful thinking. That is not spiritual bypassing or the mind seeking comfort in fantasy. That is signal. And today we are going to follow it all the way down. What you are about to hear is not a theory. It is not a belief system asking for your faith. It is a guided excavation through the actual layers of reality itself, from the surface that everyone sees, through the quantum mechanics that science has verified beneath it, through the ancient maps that wisdom traditions drew of this hidden territory long before instruments existed to measure it, and finally to the core truth that has been waiting beneath all of it, waiting for your awareness to look deep enough to find it. This is going to take time, and it is going to require something from you that most people never offer to their own understanding. It is going to require you to hold what you think you know loosely enough that something deeper can come through. Are you willing to do that? Because if you are, what you find beneath the surface of reality today will make it impossible to look at your life the same way again. Let us begin at the surface. Let us begin with what everyone agrees on, and then let us peel it back. You have been taught in 1,000 different ways that the universe is essentially indifferent, that it operates by fixed laws that have nothing to do with you, that matter is solid, that time moves in one direction, that cause precedes effect in an orderly mechanical sequence, and that consciousness is something that happens inside your skull as a byproduct of biological processes that are themselves just chemistry, which is itself just physics, which is itself just particles bumping into each other in the dark. This is the surface story. This is what the dominant worldview has agreed upon as the operating system of reality. And for most people, this is where the investigation ends. The universe is a machine. You are a small biological component of that machine. You live, you produce, you consume, you die, and the machine keeps running without noticing your absence. That is the surface, and the surface is not nothing. It is not wrong exactly. The surface is a real layer of a real thing. The table is solid. The laws of physics do govern the motion of objects. The chemical processes in your body are real and measurable and important. None of that is false. But here is what the surface misses, what it has always missed, what it was never designed to capture. The surface is the thinnest layer of what is actually here, and treating it as the whole of reality is like studying the skin of an ocean and believing you have understood the sea. The surface is where the depth touches the air. It is not the depth itself, but there is a layer beneath that, and the layer beneath that is not mysticism. It is not wishful thinking. It is not ancient people projecting consciousness onto a mindless cosmos because they could not yet explain lightning. The layer beneath that is what quantum mechanics actually found when it looked beneath the surface of matter itself. Let me show you what is underneath. In the early 20th century, a group of physicists did something that should have permanently altered the course of human civilization. They looked beneath the surface of matter. They took the solid, fixed mechanical universe that everyone had agreed upon, and they asked a simple question. What is matter actually made of at its most fundamental level? And what they found there should have changed everything. When you look at a table, you see a solid surface. You can press your hand against it. It resists. It holds weight. It behaves the way solid objects are supposed to behave. The surface story of the table is that it is a fixed material object occupying a specific location in space. Peel back that understanding and look at what is underneath. The table is made of molecules. The molecules are made of atoms. The atoms are made of a nucleus surrounded by electrons. And when you look at what the nucleus and the electrons are actually made of, when you go all the way down to the quantum level, you find something that should have shattered every assumption the modern world was built upon. You find that at the quantum level, matter is not solid. Matter is not fixed. Matter is not located in a specific place in space until the moment it is observed. At the quantum level, what you think of as matter exists as a field of probability, a wave function in the language of physics, a superposition of all possible states simultaneously. The electron is not here or there. The electron is everywhere it could possibly be, existing as a cloud of probability until the moment a measurement is made, until the moment something observes it, and then it collapses. The wave function collapses from all possible positions to a single actual position. The infinite possibility condenses into a specific actuality. This is not poetry. This is not metaphor. This is the most rigorously tested, most precisely verified, most experimentally confirmed finding in the history of science. Quantum mechanics is the most accurate scientific theory ever produced by human inquiry. Its predictions match experimental results to a precision that would be like predicting the distance from New York to Los Angeles to within the width of a human hair. And what it found beneath the surface of matter is this: reality, at its most fundamental level, is not a collection of fixed things. It is a field of infinite possibility that condenses into specific actuality through the act of observation. Feel what shifts when you see this layer. Let that sit for a moment before we move. Because the mind wants to process this quickly, categorize it, file it under interesting science facts, and move on. The surface mind is very good at this. It can hear the most extraordinary revelation in the history of human knowledge and reduce it to a data point in under 3 seconds. Do not let it do that here. Let what was just said actually land. Reality, at its most fundamental level, is not a collection of fixed things. It is a field of infinite possibility that condenses into specific actuality through the act of observation. This is not a fringe interpretation. This is not a philosophical extrapolation beyond the data. This is what the mathematics of quantum mechanics describes directly, and what experiment after experiment has confirmed. The double-slit experiment, the delayed choice experiment, the quantum eraser, each one demonstrating, from a different angle, the same extraordinary truth, that what we call matter, what we call the physical world, what we call the solid, fixed, certain reality that we navigate every day exists in its most fundamental state as a field of probability that becomes specific in response to the act of being observed. The universe is not a machine that runs independently of awareness. The universe is a field that is in constant, dynamic, measurable, scientifically verified relationship with the act of awareness engaging with it. If you are finding this transmission useful, like this video and subscribe so you never miss a descent into the layers beneath the surface. Now let us keep going, because if you sit with that for a moment, really sit with it, not as an interesting scientific fact to file away, but as a description of the actual nature of the reality you are living inside of right now, something begins to move. The universe is not a machine operating independently of your awareness. The universe is a field of infinite possibility that is in a constant, dynamic, measurable, scientifically verified relationship with the act of observation. The quantum field is not indifferent to being looked at. The quantum field responds to being looked at. It collapses from infinite possibility into specific actuality in response to the act of measurement, the act of attention, the act of awareness engaging with it. But there is a layer beneath that, because here is what the surface explanation of quantum mechanics misses. Here is where most people stop, even the ones who have heard about wave function collapse and the observer effect. They hear it as a strange quirk of subatomic particles, something that happens at a scale so small it has no relevance to the world of tables and chairs and human lives. That is the surface interpretation, and it is wrong. The quantum field is not something that exists at a different level from your daily life. The quantum field is the foundation of everything your daily life is built upon. Your body is quantum. Your thoughts are quantum. The air you are breathing right now is quantum. Every solid, fixed, certain thing in your experience is, at its most fundamental level, a temporary condensation of infinite possibility into specific actuality. You are not living on top of the quantum field. You are living inside it. You are made of it. And it is in a constant dynamic relationship with your awareness every moment of every day. This is what quantum mechanics found beneath the surface of matter, and it should have changed everything about how humanity understands what reality is, what consciousness is, what is possible, and what the relationship between a human being and the universe actually looks like. It did not change everything, because most people stopped at the surface explanation. We do not stop here. Now let us go deeper, because here is what becomes extraordinary when you understand what quantum mechanics actually found. It found something that ancient wisdom traditions had already mapped, long before instruments existed to measure the quantum field, long before the mathematics of wave functions and superposition and entanglement had been developed, long before any of the language of modern physics existed. The mystics were already there. They had already drawn the map of the hidden territory that science would not find for thousands of years. In the Vedic tradition of ancient India, there is a concept called Akasha. It is often translated as ether or space, but that translation loses almost everything that the concept actually contains. Akasha, in its original meaning, is not empty space. It is the field of infinite possibility from which all manifest reality emerges. It is the substratum, the ground of being, the ocean from which every wave of experience arises. It is not passive. It is not inert. It is a living, responsive, intelligent field that is in constant relationship with consciousness. The Vedic seers who articulated this concept were not guessing. They were not constructing comforting cosmologies to explain away their fear of the dark. They were reporting from direct investigation, from a mode of inquiry that was as rigorous in its own terms as laboratory science is in its terms. They turned their awareness inward, all the way inward, past the surface of thought and sensation and identity, and what they found at the deepest level of their own consciousness was not personal. It was the same field that underlies everything, the same ground of being from which all of reality emerges. They called it Akasha. They called it Brahman. They called it the ocean of pure consciousness from which all waves arise and to which all waves return. The Vedic tradition said this thousands of years ago. Peel back that understanding and look at what is underneath. In the Hermetic tradition, one of the oldest philosophical and spiritual frameworks in the Western world, there is a principle that was recorded in a text called the Kybalion. The principle is this: the universe is mental. Not in the sense that it is imaginary or that it exists only in someone's head. Mental in the sense that its fundamental nature is more like mind than like matter. That consciousness is not a product of the physical universe. Consciousness is the ground from which the physical universe emerges. This is not a primitive or pre-scientific idea. This is a description of something that modern quantum mechanics has been forced to confront through its own experimental findings. The measurement problem in quantum mechanics, the question of why and how observation collapses the wave function, has led some of the most rigorous physicists in the world to conclusions that sound remarkably like what the Hermetic tradition articulated millennia ago. That consciousness is not a passenger in the physical universe. Consciousness is a participant in the creation of the physical universe. The Hermetic tradition said this thousands of years ago. In the Buddhist tradition, the concept of Indra's net describes a universe in which every point is connected to every other point, in which what happens at one location instantaneously affects every other location, in which there is no true separation between any part and any other part of the whole. Quantum entanglement, which Einstein called spooky action at a distance because he could not accept what it implied, demonstrates exactly this. Two particles, once entangled, remain in instantaneous communication regardless of the distance between them. Change the state of one and the other responds instantly, not at the speed of light, instantly, across any distance. The universe is non-local. Separation is a surface phenomenon. Beneath the surface, everything remains connected. And this is not a small thing. This is not a curiosity confined to laboratory conditions. Entanglement is not an exception to the rules of the universe. It is a revelation of the rules of the universe. The rules beneath the surface rules. The rules that the surface rules are sitting on top of. And those deeper rules say, separation is the surface. Connection is the depth. Everything that appears separate from everything else is, at the level of the quantum field, still in instantaneous relationship with everything else. The Buddhist tradition mapped this thousands of years ago. In the Sufi tradition, the mystic poet Rumi wrote of a field that exists beyond all the categories of human understanding, beyond right and wrong, beyond known and unknown, beyond the visible and the invisible, a field where all things meet in their deepest nature. He called it the field. He said he would meet you there. What Rumi was pointing toward was not a metaphysical abstraction. It was a description of a real place, a real layer of reality, a real depth beneath the surface of the ordinary world that is accessible not through intellectual argument, but through a quality of awareness that has learned to go past the surface of things, past the categories, past the labels, past the familiar, into the field where all things meet in their deepest nature. The Sufi tradition pointed to this thousands of years ago. In the indigenous traditions of cultures on every continent, there is a concept that recurs with remarkable consistency despite the vast geographic and cultural distances between these traditions. The concept that the world is alive, that the land, the sky, the water, the animals, the plants, the stones are not objects. They are subjects. They are participants in a living, communicating, responsive web of relationship. That the universe is not a collection of things, but a community of beings in constant conversation. This was not primitive animism. This was not pre-scientific confusion of the animate and the inanimate. this was a sophisticated mapping of a hidden layer of reality that modern physics is only now beginning to verify with its instruments. The quantum field is not silent. The quantum field is not indifferent. The quantum field is not a passive backdrop against which your life happens. The quantum field wants to tell you everything. That is not a metaphor. That is a description of the actual nature of the field that underlies all of reality, as verified by the most precise science humanity has ever produced, and as mapped by the deepest wisdom traditions humanity has ever developed. And notice what this convergence means. When the most rigorous external science and the most rigorous internal science, the science of awareness that the wisdom traditions practiced, arrive at the same description of the same hidden layer of reality, that is not coincidence. That is the field verifying itself through two different instruments of investigation. That is the depth confirming its own existence through both the telescope and the mirror. But there is a layer beneath that, because knowing this intellectually is the surface of knowing it, and the surface of knowing it is not enough to change anything. Let me show you what is underneath the intellectual understanding. There is an ancient story. It is not from any single tradition. It is the kind of story that appears in different forms in different cultures, because it is describing something so fundamental about the nature of human experience that it keeps being told in different languages, in different centuries, by people who never had contact with each other. The story goes like this. There was once a woman named Mira who lived in a city built on the edge of a great lake. The city was prosperous and busy and full of noise and movement, and Mira had lived there her entire life. She worked in the city, she ate in the city, she slept in the city, she had friends in the city, and a life that made sense within the city's terms. But every morning, before the city woke up, Mira would walk to the edge of the lake and look out at the water. She did not know why she did this. She could not have explained it to anyone who asked. There was something about the lake that called to her in a way she had no language for. Something beneath the surface of the water that she could almost see. On certain mornings, when the light was right and the water was still, she could see something moving down there. Shapes, patterns, something organized and alive. Everyone in the city told her the lake was just water, that what she was seeing was reflections, or her imagination, or the play of light on the surface. Her colleagues told her to stop wasting her mornings at the water's edge. Her family told her to focus on what was real. Her friends, who loved her, gently suggested that she was perhaps spending too much time alone. Mira listened to all of them, and she kept going back to the lake. One morning, a very old man was sitting at the water's edge when she arrived. He was not from the city. She had never seen him before. He was looking at the lake the way she looked at the lake, with that quality of attention that was not casual, that was not idle, that was the attention of someone who had learned to see beneath the surface of things. Mira sat down beside him. For a long time, neither of them spoke. They just looked at the water together. Then the old man said, without looking away from the lake, "What do you see?" Mira said, "I see something moving beneath the surface. I have always seen it. Everyone tells me it is not real." The old man was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "It is the most real thing in this lake. The surface is only the surface. What moves beneath it is the life of the lake itself. The surface is where the lake touches the air. The depth is where the lake is most fully itself." He paused. Then he said, "The same is true of you." Mira turned to look at him. He was already gone. She looked back at the lake, and for the first time, she did not try to see through the surface. She let her awareness sink beneath it. Not physically. Something shifted in the quality of her attention. Something let go. And what she saw then, what she had always been almost seeing, came into focus with a clarity that made her catch her breath. The lake was full of life, full of movement, full of patterns of relationships so intricate and so beautiful that she understood immediately why no one who had only seen the surface could imagine what was down there. She sat there until the city woke up around her, and when she walked back through the streets, she saw the city differently. Not because the city had changed, because her attention had learned to go beneath the surface. And once you learn to do that, you cannot unlearn it. You have been Mira at the edge of the lake for a long time now. You have been seeing something moving beneath the surface of your reality, something that everyone around you has been telling you is not real. It is the most real thing in the lake, and today we are going to learn to see it clearly. What hidden layer have you recently found beneath the surface of your own reality? Drop it in the comments. A moment when the pattern became visible, a truth that was there all along, something you always sensed but could not yet name. I want to know what the field has been showing you, but there is a layer beneath that. Because here is what the story of Mira points to that we need to make explicit, because the implications of it are so vast that the mind tends to slide past them without fully landing. If the quantum field is a field of infinite possibility that collapses into specific actuality through the act of observation, and if ancient wisdom traditions across every culture and every century have mapped this same field as the living ground of all reality, then what does that mean for you? It means that the field you are living inside of is not passive. It is not a neutral container in which your life happens. It is a dynamic, responsive, intelligent field that is in constant relationship with your awareness. It means that what you pay attention to matters in a way that is not metaphorical. It matters in a way that is physical. Quantum physical. The field responds to observation. Your observation is a form of measurement, and measurement collapses infinite possibility into specific actuality. You are not watching reality from the outside. You are participating in the creation of reality from the inside. Every moment, whether you know it or not, whether you intend it or not. Most people do this unconsciously. They collapse the quantum field of infinite possibility into the same specific actualities over and over again, not because those are the only possibilities the field contains, but because their awareness is tuned to a narrow band of the field's total frequency range. They see what they have been conditioned to see. They expect what they have been taught to expect. And the field, being a field that responds to observation, gives them more of what they are observing for. This is not a punishment. It is not a conspiracy. It is the mechanics of a system operating exactly as it is designed to operate. The field is responsive. Your awareness is the instrument of response. And if your instrument is calibrated to a narrow frequency, you will only receive a narrow band of what the field is broadcasting. But the field is broadcasting everything, all the time, continuously, infinitely. The quantum field wants to tell you everything. It has always been telling you everything. The limitation has never been in what the field is transmitting. The limitation has been in the bandwidth of your reception. Now let us go to the layer beneath that, because this is where it gets precise. This is where we move from the beautiful and the philosophical into the specific and the operational. This is where we talk about what actually changes when your awareness learns to go beneath the surface. There is a concept in quantum mechanics called the zero-point field. It is also called the quantum vacuum. And it is one of the most extraordinary discoveries in the history of science, and one of the least understood by the general population. The quantum vacuum is not empty. This is crucial. The quantum vacuum, what we call empty space, what we think of as the nothing that exists between things, is not nothing. It is a field of energy so vast, so dense, so incomprehensibly energetic, that physicists have calculated that a single cubic centimeter of the quantum vacuum contains more energy than all the matter in the observable universe. Let that land. The space between things is not empty. The space between things is the most energetically dense field that physics has ever measured. The apparent emptiness is a surface. Beneath the surface of what looks like nothing is an infinite field of energy and information. And this changes everything about the story the surface tells you. The surface tells you that empty space is nothing, that the gaps between things are where reality thins out and approaches absence. That the solid things are the real things and the spaces between them are just the distances that separate one real thing from another. The depth tells you the opposite. The depth says that what looks like empty space is the most energetically rich environment in the known universe. That the gaps between things are not absences but presences. That the apparent nothingness between particles, between atoms, between you and the person sitting across from you, is not nothing. It is the field. It is the ground. It is the infinite ocean of energy and information from which all the visible, measurable, solid-seeming things have temporarily emerged. The surface tells you one thing. The depth tells you the opposite. The physicist David Bohm, one of the most important quantum theorists of the 20th century, called this the implicate order. He described reality as having two aspects. The explicate order, which is the surface world of separate things in space and time that we can see and touch and measure, and the implicate order, which is the deeper level from which the explicate order unfolds, in which everything is enfolded into everything else, in which separation is a surface phenomenon and connection is the fundamental truth. Bohm said that what we think of as matter, as separate objects, as individual particles, are like ripples on the surface of the implicate order. They appear separate, they appear solid, they appear located in specific places in space, but beneath the surface, they are all expressions of a single unfolded whole. Think about what this means for the story you have been told about yourself. The story you have been told says, "You are here. The world is out there. You are separate from it. You must navigate it, negotiate with it, earn from it, defend against it. The world is the environment and you are the organism, and the relationship between you is fundamentally one of separation, with occasional moments of connection. That is the surface story. The implicate order says, you are not separate from the world. You are an expression of the same field that the world is an expression of. The apparent boundary between you and your environment is a surface phenomenon. Beneath the surface, you and the world are not two things in relationship. You are one field, temporarily organized into the local pattern of you, in relationship with itself through the experience of what you call your life. The surface tells you one thing, the depth tells you the opposite. The surface says, you are separate, you are isolated, you are a small biological organism in an indifferent mechanical universe, and what happens to you is determined by forces outside your control. The depth says, you are a localized expression of a non-local field. You are a temporary condensation of infinite possibility. You are in constant, dynamic, measurable relationship with the field from which all of reality emerges. And the field is responsive. The field is communicative. The field is, in the most precise scientific sense of the word, alive. The quantum field wants to tell you everything. And here is what it wants to tell you. It wants to tell you that the version of yourself you have been living as is the surface version. That beneath the identity you have been carrying, beneath the story you have been telling about who you are and what you are capable of and what the world will allow for you, there is a deeper version of you that exists in direct relationship with the field of infinite possibility. It wants to tell you that the limitations you have accepted as real are surface phenomena, that they are not written into the structure of reality. They are written into the structure of the frequency you have been observing from. And frequency can change. It wants to tell you that what you have been sensing beneath the surface of your life, that persistent, quiet, sometimes aching sense that there is more, that you are more, that reality is more than the thin surface everyone around you has agreed to accept, that sensing is not imagination, it is accurate perception. It is your awareness beginning to detect the signal that the field has been broadcasting all along. You have always sensed there was more beneath the surface. You were right. But there is a layer beneath that. let us talk about what it actually feels like to receive what the field is transmitting. Because this is where most people who have heard the quantum language, who have encountered the ancient wisdom, who have felt the pull of the deeper reality, this is where most of them get stuck. They understand it, they believe it, they find it beautiful and compelling and true, and then they go back to the surface, because the surface is familiar, because the surface is where everyone else is, because the surface has a grammar and a logic, and a set of social agreements that make it navigable in ways that the depth does not yet. The depth feels disorienting at first, not because it is dangerous, because it is unfamiliar, because your nervous system, your habitual patterns of attention, your conditioned responses to experience, all of them have been calibrated for surface navigation. And when your awareness begins to go beneath the surface, when you begin to actually receive what the field is transmitting, it can feel like losing your footing. This is not falling. This is learning to swim. Here is what the field actually transmits, when your awareness is calibrated to receive it. The first thing the field transmits is pattern, not the surface patterns that everyone can see, the deeper patterns, the organizing principles beneath the apparent chaos of events, the way that what looks like a random sequence of experiences from the surface reveals itself, from the depth, to be a coherent and purposeful unfolding. You have probably already noticed this. You have probably already had moments where you looked back at a sequence of events that felt chaotic and painful and purposeless while you were inside them, and from the distance of time you could suddenly see the pattern, the way that the thing that felt like loss was actually redirection, the way that the door that closed was the only thing that could have pushed you toward the door that opened, the way that the person who left your life created the space for the person who was supposed to be there. From the surface, this looks like coincidence. From the depth, it looks like something else entirely. The quantum field is not random. Randomness is a surface interpretation of a depth that is too complex for surface instruments to measure. Beneath what looks like randomness is a field of exquisite order, a field of patterns so intricate and so vast that from the surface it is indistinguishable from chaos. But from the depth, from the perspective of awareness that has learned to go beneath the surface, the pattern is unmistakable. And this is important, because the surface mind, when it encounters difficulty, when it encounters loss or disruption or the collapse of something it had built its plans around, tends to interpret that disruption as evidence that the universe is random or indifferent or punishing. The surface mind looks at a pattern it cannot see and concludes there is no pattern. But the absence of visible pattern is not the same as the absence of pattern. It is the absence of depth perception. The second thing the field transmits is resonance. The sense of rightness or wrongness that you feel in your body before your mind has had time to analyze a situation. The way certain people, certain places, certain paths feel aligned, and others feel discordant, even when the surface analysis says they should be equivalent. You have been taught to distrust this. You have been taught to call it intuition and treat it as a soft, unreliable, unscientific mode of knowing that should always defer to rational analysis. You have been taught that the surface is more real than the depth, that what you can see and measure and verify is more trustworthy than what you feel in the field beneath the surface. But here is what the science actually says. Your body is a quantum instrument. Every cell in your body is engaged in a constant process of quantum coherence, of quantum tunneling, of quantum entanglement. The process of photosynthesis in plants, the navigation of birds across thousands of miles, the sense of smell that can detect a single molecule, all of these biological processes have been shown to operate through quantum mechanisms. Your body is not a classical machine. Your body is a quantum instrument, and it is in constant, direct physical contact with the quantum field. The resonance you feel is not imagination. It is your quantum instrument detecting information in the field that your surface-level analytical mind has not yet had time to process. It is a real signal from a real field, and it is one of the primary ways the field transmits information to you. The third thing the field transmits is what I want to spend some time with, because it is the most extraordinary and the most consistently misunderstood and the most important for what we are building toward. The field transmits what can only be called invitation. Not command, not decree, not fate or destiny in the sense of something fixed and predetermined. Invitation. The quantum field of infinite possibility is not a field that pushes you toward specific outcomes. It is a field that opens toward the direction of your most coherent attention. It is a field that responds to the quality of your awareness by making more of itself available in that direction. It is a field that, when your attention is genuinely, coherently, deeply focused on something, begins to organize itself in ways that make that something more accessible. This is what the ancient wisdom traditions called prayer or intention, or the power of focused awareness. This is what the mystics described when they talked about aligning with the divine will, or entering the flow, or walking in the Tao. This is what modern researchers studying the quantum field describe when they talk about the role of consciousness in collapsing the wave function. The field is not telling you what to do. The field is showing you what is possible, and it is showing you this continuously through every channel available to it, through the pattern of events in your life, through the resonance in your body, through the quiet pull towards certain directions that you have been learning to trust more than the loud noise of surface-level certainty. The quantum field wants to tell you everything, and what it most wants to tell you, what it has been trying to tell you through every channel it has available, is this. The version of reality you have been living inside of is the thinnest possible surface of what is actually here. There is a layer beneath that, and beneath that, and beneath that, and every layer you reach reveals not just more of what the field contains, but more of what you contain. Because you are not separate from the field, you are an expression of it, a localized, temporary, exquisitely particular expression of an infinite field of possibility. And the depth of the field is also the depth of you. Now let us go to the practice, because this is where we stop talking about the depth and start actually going there. What I am about to offer you is not a meditation technique in the conventional sense. It is not a relaxation exercise. It is a perceptual shift, a deliberate recalibration of the instrument of your awareness, from surface frequency to depth frequency, from the narrow band of what you have been conditioned to see to the broader band of what the field is actually transmitting. You can do this right now. You can do this with your eyes open, wherever you are, whatever you are doing. Here is the practice. Choose something in your immediate environment. Anything. A wall, a plant, your own hand, a glass of water. It does not matter what you choose. Choose something and look at it. Now, look at it the way you normally look at things, with the surface attention, the attention that categorizes and labels and moves on. Notice how quickly your mind processes it. Wall, plant, hand, glass. Category assigned. Significance assessed. Attention moving to the next thing. That is surface attention. That is the frequency most people operate at most of the time. It is efficient, it is practical. It allows you to navigate the surface of the world quickly and without being overwhelmed. But it comes at a cost. The cost is that you never actually see what you are looking at. You see the label, you see the category, you see the surface interpretation of the thing, and you mistake that interpretation for the thing itself. Now, without changing what you are looking at, change the quality of your attention. Instead of looking at the surface of the thing, let your awareness sink beneath the surface. Not physically, something in the quality of your attention. Let it soften, let it slow down, let it go past the category, past the label, past the familiar. If you are looking at your hand, for example, let your awareness go past the surface of the skin and into the fact that what you are looking at is a temporary condensation of the quantum field. That beneath the surface of what looks like solid matter, there is a dance of quantum probability, so complex and so beautiful that no instrument yet built can fully map it. That the atoms that make up your hand were forged in the heart of a star. That the space between the particles that make up your hand is, at the quantum level, a field of infinite energy and information. You are not looking at a hand, you are looking at the universe looking at itself. Feel what shifts when you see this layer. This is not a thought experiment. Something actually changes in your body when your awareness makes this shift. Something in your nervous system responds to the expansion of frequency. Something that has been contracted, braced against the surface of reality, begins to soften because at some level, your body has always known that the surface is not the whole truth. And when your awareness finally goes beneath it, even for a moment, something in you recognizes where it is. This is home. The depth is home. You have always known this. The practice is simply this. Do it again, and again, and again, in every moment that you remember. Look at the surface of what is in front of you, and then let your awareness go beneath it, not to escape the surface, not to deny the reality of the table and the wall and the hand and the glass of water, but to hold the surface in the context of the depth that it is resting on. Because when you do that, when you hold the surface in the context of the depth, everything changes. Not dramatically, not all at once, but in the way that everything changes when you finally see what has always been there, quietly, completely, irreversibly. You cannot unsee the depth once you have seen it, and this is the practice that changes everything, not because it is dramatic, because it is cumulative. Each time you let your awareness go beneath the surface, you are recalibrating your instrument. You are widening the bandwidth of your reception. You are training your awareness to hold the surface and the depth simultaneously, to navigate the world of tables and walls and human conversations while remaining in contact with the quantum field that all of those things are resting on. And as that training deepens, something begins to shift in the quality of your experience. The surface does not become less real. It becomes more transparent. You can still see it clearly, but you can also see through it. And what you see through it changes everything about how you understand what is happening, what is possible, and what you are. And now let us go to the layer beneath that, because there is something waiting there that we have been building toward, something that the quantum mechanics and the ancient wisdom and the practice all point toward, but do not quite name. Let us name it now. There is a man I want to tell you about. His name was Elias. He was not a physicist or a mystic or a philosopher. He was a cartographer. He made maps for a living. Precise, detailed, accurate maps of the physical terrain of the world around him. Elias was very good at his work. He prided himself on the precision of his maps, every elevation marked correctly, every river traced to its source, every road and path and boundary documented, with the care of someone who understood that the accuracy of a map could be a matter of life and death for the people who used it. One day, Elias was commissioned to map a territory that no one had mapped before, a vast stretch of land at the edge of the known world, where the terrain was complex and the conditions were difficult, and previous expeditions had returned with incomplete and contradictory information. Elias set out with his instruments and his notebooks and his years of expertise. And for the first weeks, the work went as it always had. He measured and recorded and built his map layer by layer, the way he always built his maps, surface by surface. But something was different about this territory. The more he mapped it, the more he felt that his instruments were not telling him the whole story. The elevation markers were accurate. The river traces were correct. The distances measured true. But there was something about the territory that was not captured in the measurements, something about the way the land itself seemed to respond to his presence, the way certain paths seemed to open in front of him without his choosing them, the way certain questions he was holding in his mind seemed to be answered by the landscape itself, not in words, but in the way the terrain unfolded. He wrote in his notebook, in the margins of his precise measurements, "This land is communicating. I do not know how to map what it is saying." He continued his work. He built his map. It was, by every conventional measure, an excellent map, accurate and detailed and useful. But on the last page of his notebook, after all the measurements and coordinates and technical notations, He wrote something that was not part of any map he had made before. He wrote, "There is a layer of this territory that cannot be captured by instruments, a layer that is only accessible through a different quality of attention, a layer that communicates not through data, but through resonance. I have spent my life mapping surfaces. I am only now beginning to understand that every surface I have ever mapped has been resting on a depth that my instruments could not reach." He paused. Then he wrote, "The depth is not empty. The depth is the most information-rich layer of all. The depth is where the territory is most fully itself, and the territory wants to be known, not just measured. Known." He closed his notebook. He looked out at the land around him. And, for the first time in his career as a cartographer, he put down his instruments, and he listened. What he heard in that listening, he never fully put into words. But the maps he made after that journey were different from every map he had made before. Not in their technical accuracy, which remained as precise as ever, but in something that people who used his maps consistently noticed without being able to name. They said his maps felt like the territory. Not just described it, felt like it, as if the map itself carried some quality of the land's own nature, some transmission from the depth of the territory that had found its way into the surface of the document. Other cartographers examined his maps and could not identify what was different about them. Every measurement was standard, every notation was conventional, but something was there that was not in other maps, something that made the people who used them feel, for the first time, that they were not just navigating terrain, they were in relationship with it. Elias never explained this. When asked, he would only say, "I learned to listen before I measured, and what I heard changed what I was able to see." You have been, Elias, with your instruments for a long time. You have been measuring the surface of your life with the instruments you were given, the rational mind, the social consensus, the conventional frameworks for understanding what is real and what is possible. And your measurements have been accurate by the standards of surface measurement. But there is a layer beneath the surface that your instruments cannot reach. A layer that is not accessible through measurement, but through a different quality of attention. A layer that communicates not through data, but through resonance. A layer that is the most information-rich, the most real, the most fully itself. And that layer wants to be known. Not just measured, known. The quantum field wants to tell you everything. And it is telling you, right now, through the resonance in your body as you hear these words, through the quality of attention that has been building in you throughout this transmission, through the pull you feel toward the depth of things, the pull that has always been there, the pull that brought you here today. It is telling you that you are ready. Not ready in the sense of having completed some preparation. Ready in the sense of having arrived at the moment where the veil between the surface and the depth is thin enough to see through. And this is where we go to the deepest layer, the layer beneath all the other layers, The core truth that has been hidden beneath everything else. Here it is. The reason the quantum field wants to tell you everything is not because it is a benevolent force external to you that has decided to share its wisdom. The reason the quantum field wants to tell you everything is because you are the quantum field. Not metaphorically, not spiritually, in a way that can be safely kept separate from the physical reality of your daily life. Literally, physically, quantum mechanically. You are a localized expression of the same field that underlies all of reality. The field that the physicists measured beneath the surface of matter. The field that the mystics mapped beneath the surface of ordinary experience. The field that the ancient traditions described as the living ground of all being. That field is not something you exist inside of, the way a fish exists inside water. That field is what you are made of. It is what you are. At the most fundamental level of your existence, you are not a biological organism that happens to be embedded in a quantum field. You are the quantum field, temporarily and locally organized into the particular form of you. This means that when the field communicates, it is not an external voice speaking to you. It is your own deepest nature speaking to you. It is the depth of what you are, speaking to the surface of what you have learned to call yourself. The veil between you and the quantum field is not a barrier between you and something outside you. The veil is the membrane between the surface version of yourself and the depth version of yourself, between the identity you have constructed through conditioning and consensus and survival, and the infinite field of possibility that you actually are. And the veil is thinner than you think. It dissolves the moment your awareness is ready to see through it. This is what every wisdom tradition has been pointing toward. Not the acquisition of external knowledge, not the achievement of some state that is separate from ordinary experience. The recognition of what is already the case, the recognition that the depth you have been seeking is not somewhere else. It is not in a different dimension or a different lifetime or a different version of your circumstances. It is here. It is now. It is you, at a depth you have not yet looked at clearly. The quantum field wants to tell you everything, and what it most wants to tell you is this: you are not a surface creature who occasionally glimpses the depth. You are a depth creature who has been living at the surface. And the moment you recognize this, the moment you genuinely, fully, in your body and not just in your mind recognize this, everything changes. Not because your circumstances immediately transform, not because the material conditions of your life rearrange themselves overnight, but because the frequency from which you are observing reality changes. And when the frequency of observation changes, what the field presents as actuality changes. Because the field is responsive. Because the field collapses from infinite possibility into specific actuality in response to observation. And you are the observer. You are not just a passive receiver of what the field broadcasts. You are an active participant in what the field manifests. Your awareness is not a window through which you watch reality happen. Your awareness is an instrument through which reality is created. This is what quantum mechanics found beneath the surface of matter. This is what the ancient wisdom traditions mapped beneath the surface of ordinary experience. This is what the deepest layer of your own nature has been trying to tell you through every moment of your life that felt like it was asking for more than the surface could give. You have always sensed there was more beneath the surface. You were right. And now you know what is there. But there is one more layer, and this is the most important one, because knowing this is still the surface of living it. You can understand everything that has been said in this transmission. You can find it compelling and beautiful and true. You can feel the resonance of it in your body and recognize it as something you have always known. And then you can go back to the surface, back to the familiar frequency, back to the narrow band of what you have been conditioned to see. This is what most people do, not because they are weak or unconscious or unwilling, but because the surface has gravity. The surface has the weight of consensus behind it. The surface has the momentum of every habit and assumption and social agreement that has been building since you were born. The surface is what everyone around you is navigating by. And the pull of the collective surface agreement is powerful. But here is what I want you to understand about that pull. It is not more real than the depth. It is just louder. The surface is loud. The depth is quiet. And in a world that rewards loudness and pathologizes quiet, the depth can feel like the less real of the two. It can feel like something you have to work to access, something fragile that disappears the moment the noise of ordinary life reasserts itself. But the depth is not fragile. The depth is the most stable thing that exists. The quantum field has been here since before the universe had a surface. The ancient wisdom traditions that mapped it have persisted through every civilization that has risen and fallen on the surface of history. The core truth that you are a localized expression of an infinite field of possibility does not become less true when you forget it. It is not diminished by your distraction. It does not require your belief to remain the foundation of everything you are. The depth is always there. The depth is always you. The depth is always available. What changes is not the depth. What changes is your willingness to be still enough, quiet enough, present enough to receive what it is transmitting. And this is the integration. This is what you take from this transmission into the rest of your life. Not a belief system, not a framework to defend, not a new layer of surface understanding to carry around and refer to when the world feels overwhelming. A practice of attention. The practice is simple. It is not easy, because nothing that requires going against the gravity of the surface is easy. But it is simple. Every day, in as many moments as you can remember to do it, let your awareness go beneath the surface of what you are experiencing. Not to escape the surface, not to deny the reality of what is happening in your life, but to hold it in the context of the depth that it is resting on. When you are in a difficult conversation, let your awareness go beneath the surface of the words being said to the quantum field of possibility that underlies the interaction. What is actually possible here, that the surface of the conflict is concealing? What is the field trying to organize through this friction? Because friction at the depth level is often the field reorganizing itself towards something that the surface cannot yet see. The difficult conversation is rarely about what the surface says it is about. At the depth, it is almost always about a pattern that needs to shift, a layer that needs to lift, a truth that has been living beneath the surface of the relationship and is finally asking to be seen. When you are facing a decision that feels impossible, let your awareness go beneath the surface of the options you can see to the field of infinite possibility that exists beneath the visible choices. What does the field transmit when you stop analyzing the surface and start listening to the depth? Not what your fear says, not what your conditioning says, not what the social consensus says about what a person in your position should choose. What does the field say? What does the resonance in your body say when you let it speak before the analytical mind has a chance to override it? When you feel stuck, when the surface of your life feels fixed and limited and resistant to change, let your awareness go beneath the surface of what you can see to the quantum reality of what is actually the case. At the level of the field, nothing is fixed. Everything is a temporary condensation of infinite possibility. The fixedness is a surface phenomenon. The depth is always in motion. What looks like a wall from the surface is, at the quantum level, a field of probability that has not yet been invited to reorganize itself. And the invitation comes from the quality of your observation. And when you do not know what to do, when the noise of the surface is too loud and the signal of the depth seems too quiet to hear, remember this: the field is always transmitting. The quantum field wants to tell you everything. The limitation has never been in what the field is sending. The limitation has always been in the bandwidth of your reception. And bandwidth can change. You have just changed yours. This transmission is one that returns differently each time you come back to it. In a quiet morning before the surface noise rises, or in the stillness before sleep, when the deeper layers are most accessible, let it play again and notice what the field tells you that it could not reach the first time. Because each time you return, you are returning with a slightly wider bandwidth, a slightly more transparent veil, a slightly deeper capacity to receive what the field has been transmitting all along. And what you hear in the third listening will be different from what you heard in the first, not because the transmission has changed, because you have. And if you know someone living at the edge of the lake, watching something move beneath the surface and being told it is not real, send this to them. When two awareness fields descend into the same depth together, the veil thins for both. That is not sentiment. That is the quantum mechanics of shared observation. Entangled awareness perceives more of the field than isolated awareness. The depth is more accessible in company. Not because the depth requires community to exist, but because the surface agreement that holds the veil in place is a collective construction. and collective constructions are most effectively dissolved by collective intention. Here is what I want to ask you to do with what you have received in this transmission. Not to keep it, not to file it away as interesting content that you encountered once, but to take it into the next moment of your life and let it change the quality of your attention. The next conversation you have, the next decision you face, the next moment when the surface of your life feels thin and insufficient and not quite real enough. Go beneath it. Let your awareness sink past the surface of what you can see and into the depth of what is actually there. And notice what the field tells you, because it will tell you something. It always does. It has always been telling you something. You are simply now calibrated to receive it. There is a community of people who are doing exactly this, who have decided that the surface is not enough, who have heard the pull of the depth and chosen to follow it rather than explain it away, who are learning together to live from the frequency of the field rather than the frequency of the surface agreement. If you have felt throughout this transmission that what you were hearing was not new information but remembered truth, if you have felt the resonance of it in your body rather than just the comprehension of it in your mind, if you have felt the veil between the surface and the depth thinning as we have gone deeper together, then you are one of these people. You have always been one of these people. The question has never been whether you are capable of seeing beneath the surface. The question has been whether you are ready to stop pretending that the surface is all there is. Drop one word in the comments that describes what you found in the deepest layer of this transmission. One word for what the field told you when your awareness went beneath the surface. Not the intellectual understanding, the felt sense, the body knowing, the thing that shifted when the veil thinned. One word, because the depth does not require many words. The depth is precise. The depth is clear. The depth knows exactly what it wants to say. And share this transmission with one person who you know is living at the edge of the lake, watching something move beneath the surface, being told by everyone around them that it is not real. Share it with the person who is ready to see what is actually down there. Because what has been revealed in this transmission cannot be re-hidden. Not for you. Not now. You have gone too deep. You have seen too much of what is actually beneath the surface of reality for the surface story to fully close back over you. This is what the field was waiting for. This moment, this depth, this recognition. The veil between you and the infinite field of possibility that you actually are is not a barrier. It is a membrane, and it dissolves the moment your awareness is ready to see through it. Your awareness is ready. It has been ready for a long time. You have been ready for a long time. The pull you felt beneath the surface of your life, the sense that there was more, that you were more, that reality was more than the thin surface everyone around you had agreed to accept. That was not imagination. That was the field calling you toward the depth of what you actually are. You are not a surface creature who occasionally glimpses the depth. You are the depth temporarily expressed on the surface. And the moment you live from that recognition, the moment you hold the surface of your life in the context of the infinite field of possibility that you are made of, everything changes. Not because the surface changes first, because the depth changes the surface, because the observer changes what is observed, because the frequency of your awareness changes what the field presents as actuality. This is the quantum truth beneath the surface of everything you have been taught about reality. This is what the ancient wisdom traditions mapped, and what modern physics has verified. This is what has been hidden in plain sight beneath every moment of your life. The quantum field wants to tell you everything. And now, for the first time, you are listening from the right depth. You are no longer a surface dweller. You see the depth now. You feel it. You know it in your body in a way that cannot be unfelt. And every time you return to this depth, every time you let your awareness sink beneath the surface of what you are experiencing and into the field of what is actually there, you go a little deeper. The membrane becomes a little more transparent. The signal becomes a little clearer. This is not a destination. This is a direction. And the direction is always the same. Deeper. Always deeper. Because beneath every layer you reach, there is another layer. And each layer reveals not just more of what the field contains, but more of what you contain. Because you and the field are not two different things. You are the field, knowing itself through the particular and precious instrument of your awareness. Welcome to what was always beneath everything. The veil is thinner than you think, and now you can see through it. What has been revealed cannot be re-hidden. The next layer of this is waiting for you in the video on the observer effect. Not the surface explanation you have heard before, but what is actually beneath it, the part that will restructure how you understand the relationship between your awareness and the reality it is creating. That is where this goes next.